We're not live. It's Gordy Canuck, and you are watching Act One, a Canadian take on news events. I see the live chat has been getting filled up by Danny and Eat Me, who are both moderators. They'll are there to make sure trolls don't show up, and if they do, that if they start to spam and things of that nature, that the the chat box does not get too crazy, stupid, insane. At any rate, we are right now the 18th, Thursday, the 18th of September, 2025. It's just after 10:15 when I scheduled this live. I welcome everyone to fill up the live chat, and that includes challenging my thoughts, views, opinions. Not everyone has to agree. I've said many times on this station, I'm something of a free speech absolutist. I am, as it suggests in the description to this video, I do not believe that Jimmy Kimmel should have been canceled for his what he said on air. And in case anyone's unfamiliar with exactly what it is he said, I have it. Oh, I had it on a post on my Facebook timeline. And the words he said specifically were, and I got this as a quote, in the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination and the identifying of the alleged shooter as being one Tyler David. I think the kid's middle name is David, Tyler David Robinson. It seems you always have to have three names: John Wilkes Booth, Lee Harvey Oswald, um, etc. It always seems to have to be two names for whatever reason. Anyway, this is what Kimmel said. We, quote, we hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. That in of itself, he's factually wrong. Um, Based on the early reporting, people were putting this Tyler Robinson, into the MAGA camp because it was reported that he came from a Christian household. His father had been consulting with a pastor. And so that would create the impression that, okay, it's a Christian household. And likewise, both of his parents are reported to have been registered Republicans. And so it appears to be that this Tyler Robinson was brought up in what appears to be a conservative Republican Christian household. But just because a child is brought up in that environment doesn't mean that they necessarily ascribe to the same beliefs as their parents. And it's amazing to me that those who identify themselves as progressively liberal would need to be told this, that children don't always hold to the ideology espoused by their parents. Goodness, watch the old All in the Family TV show. And you had Archie Bunker and his daughter Gloria. Gloria was liberal left. Archie was, would be a MAGA type back in the context of the late 60s, early 70s. So I do not think that he should have been canceled for that, even though he did get it wrong. We've since found out, of course, that the alleged killer, and this is the thing, Jimmy Kimmel actually stated that he's already convicted the kid uh, by saying the kid who murdered Charlie Kirk. He's acting as judge and jury. The way the court system works in the United States and in my native Canada, there's something called due process, and your guilt has to be determined either by a judge or a jury of your peers beyond a reasonable doubt, and that can't happen until all the evidence has been presented and a rigorous defense has been put forth. I don't know if this kid has actually made a pronouncement of innocence or guilt. You're asked, how do you plead? We don't know yet how he's pleading. He had an appearance before the courts done by video. I watched it. Uh, and they've assigned him representation because he's been deemed to be indigent or unable to afford representation on his own. So the court is going to be appointing legal counsel for him. Um, And he did not say anything during this entire process. What I would say is they were basically outlining the charges that were going to be brought against him, advising him that he has the right to an attorney, advising him that any statements he makes, that anything he says can and will be used against him in a court of law, the old Miranda rights being extended into this court proceeding. He did not say anything. As I was watching it live, the judge, who's going to be the trial judge in this case, was reading all the charges, and there's aggravated murder. That was the term that he used, aggravated murder. And then there were some additional charges related to the unlawful discharge of a firearm, about committing a violent act in the presence of children. There are a number of different charges, probably 7 or 8 all in total. Of course, the biggest one is aggravated or what I would call premeditated murder. My goodness, I see I'm getting a lot of people on the live stream watching. This is a hot topic, even in my native Canada. And I find it so funny that Canadians were all, we'll never be the 51st state and all this stuff. And it's like, goodness, aren't we already acting like the 51st state? I've seen this story, very American centric, being reported on by Cable Pulse 24. That's Bell Media. They own CTV. CTV is reporting on it, CBC, Global. This event from the United States of America is being reported in Canada like we're already the 51st state. That's a bit of a digression. But with all the eyes watching right now, I'm going to remind anyone who's new to my content that you are welcome to subscribe to the channel. I have 1,200 or so subscribers. This is a very raw station, very raw. I call it miserable and pathetic. Some don't like that term, but I don't have high production values, professional lighting and all this stuff, all the bells and whistles. Very raw, very basic, very bare bones. And I do know that some people do gravitate toward that type of content. So if you enjoy that and you want to subscribe to the channel, you're most welcome. The YouTube world is very crowded. There are lots of voices out there. I recognize that, you know, I'm one of countless. I don't know how many YouTubers there are with stations similar to my own. It has to number in the thousands, maybe tens of thousands. So anything that can be done to help increase the profile of the station is appreciated. That includes hitting the like button. And if you subscribe, the more subscribers you have, the more likes you get, the more comments you get. This helps apparently in the algorithms and helps increase your exposure. More eyes come on, and then hopefully things take off. Anyway, I don't want to digress too much. Um, Sharunian has shown up. Sharunian's a regular viewer and probably been watching my station since its inception. And he's saying that Jimmy deserved to get fired. I don't think he did, not for those statements. Now, apparently, he's been tanking in the ratings before going live. I decided to do a quick check, and he's actually behind Stephen Colbert, who has already been canceled by CBS. This will be Stephen Colbert's last season. I actually thought Stephen Colbert was already off the air, but he's not. CBS has announced that they are canceling Stephen Colbert, meaning they're in the process of canceling him. This is his last year. Jimmy Kimmel, by contrast, he's off the air as of right now. But Stephen Colbert, you can still watch him. Regular viewers of my YouTube channel will know that I cut the cord to cable and satellite and everything else about 15 years ago. So I'm not overly familiar with Jimmy Kimmel. I do know, he's a late night talk show host. And back when I had TV, the king of late night talk shows was, of course, Johnny Carson. But now it's exploded, and you have you have Kimmel, you have Stephen Colbert, you have Seth Meyers, you have Jimmy Fallon, and I think John Ferguson. There's so many out there. And the viewership numbers that Jimmy Kimmel has been getting have been incredibly low, as I say. Stephen Colbert has had it announced, CBS has announced we're canceling. He's going to be off the air after this year. This is his final season. And the reason given was that his ratings are crap. And Jimmy Kimmel's ratings are even worse than Stephen Colbert. Well, with all that being said, do I find Jimmy Kimmel funny? Well, I'll admit that, you can say this is Jimmy Kimmel or this is something else. The writers of the show, the creators of the show that put the content on. But his little bit of Jimmy Kimmel told me to eat your hot Halloween candy. Many will have seen that, where every Halloween, what people do is they take video of their kids the morning after Halloween, and the kids go to find their candy that they collected the previous night, and the parents have hidden it away, and they tell their kids, Jimmy Kimmel told me to eat all your Hollywood candy, and the kids go crazy, and it's funny. I found it humorous. you know uh, I told you, don't eat my candy. Oh, eat an apple. Many will have seen it. I thought it was humorous. Now, that's not Jimmy Kimmel himself. I don't know whether he had a hand in creating that little annual tradition, as it were. The other thing that I saw of Jimmy Kimmel's that I actually thought was funny was his faux feud with Matt Damon. And I always found I've watched them online on YouTube. They're all, I think, probably all the episodes in which they have this kind of ongoing faux feud between Jimmy Kimmel and Matt Damon, and it's funny. Yeah, I have no problem acknowledging it's funny, and I found Jimmy Kimmel was, the best one. I think it all started. Well, what actually started it was Jimmy Kimmel. The story is that he was way down in the ratings, tanking, wasn't getting good guests, and so after having a show with a bunch of nobodies, he decided to pull out of his rear end a name. And he said, apologies to Matt Damon. We didn't have time to get you on tonight, but we'll have you on again. And he later, in interviews that I've seen, explained that he just pulled it out of thin air, and he apparently they're friends, and he decided he'd just throw that name out there, and then they turned it into an ongoing shtick. And Sarah Silverman was dating apparently at one time Jimmy Kimmel, and their breakup, they made it over Matt Damon, and it's funny. It's funny. But anyway, I'm going to read through. This is the way I operate on my station. I like to read through the comments and um, see what's being said. You can react to what I'm saying. I love the comments. I love seeing the comment field filled up because I find I learn things. I love being confronted with differing perspectives, even those that disagree from my own. I don't like being in an echo chamber, but I do have some things to say on this. Now, Jimmy Kimmel got it wrong on that this kid was, the because he came, it was early reported that his parents registered Republican Christians, so they just made this automatic assumption that their 22-year-old son fell into the same camp. I have a friend who I've known since grade seven, Sue, a girl that I went to grade 7, 8, right through high school. I think we might have worked together at the old Golden Arches, but I'm not 100% sure of that. But she shared a meme, and this woman that I know is very left wing, very liberal. She campaigned for the Liberal Party, Mark Carney, during the most recent federal election, and in part, here's what it said. Meet Charlie Kirk's assassin, Tyler Robinson, a white Christian conservative Republican male with a gun. And I confronted her on it and said, well, you got it. Are you going to apologize for getting it wrong? Or are you going to correct it? About the only things it got right is it says that meet Charlie Kirk's assassin, a white. Okay, he is white. They got that part right. And I find it ironic that those on the left, that race is so important. Race is vitally important. We don't judge a person, we judge a person by their skin. At least that's what the left-wing progressive types seem to do. It's of paramount importance how much melanin is in an individual's skin. But that was one part of it that they got right in writing, because she was sharing a meme here. A white, then it says Christian, but we don't know if this kid, Tyler Robinson, we don't know if he was a Christian or is a Christian. We don't know his faith profession. could be atheist, could be agnostic, could be Mormon, could be Buddhist. We don't know. Can't assume that just because his parents are Christians, that he likewise is a Christian. And then further, it said conservative, Republican. Well, this is according to BBC reporting, British Broadcasting Corporation, they reported that the Tyler Robinson has no political affiliation. And for my Canadian viewers, Americans will likely know this, but in most US states and in Utah, you are not required, but you can register as either a Republican or a Democrat. And when you do that, when you register as a Republican, when there are primaries for presidential candidates, for senatorial candidates, House of Representatives candidates, etc., then as a registered Republican, you can participate in the primary process. And likewise, if you're a registered Democrat, then you can participate in their primaries. But Tyler Robinson, according to the reporting, and I saw it in BBC and other publications, Tyler Robinson was not affiliated. He had chosen to not register as being either a Republican or Democrat. And yet we have this being shared that, he's a Republican, but if he's a Republican, he was unregistered. Further, the reporting has come out, and I think it's fairly definitive that the kid was pretty much apolitical growing up, and it's only been in the recent past that he started to express political ideas. He had not been a political person prior to, I don't know, a year or so ago. Maybe he would have registered as a Democrat. We don't know. There's so many question marks on this and so many rushed to assumptions. And then it says male with a gun. And well, at least they got that right. They got the gender right, male, which bravo. He got his gender right. You didn't wait to find out how he identifies and all that other garbage nonsense. But we now know, and it appears fairly definitive, that this kid, Tyler Robinson, was involved in a relationship living with a guy who is undergoing a sex change operation, a guy who buys into this, transgender guys who play dress up and want to be treated as women, something I don't agree with. However, if you want to express that point of view, I don't think it should be banned. I don't think that someone should be canceled from TV because they express an idea. I do have a bit of an issue, and they need to be confronted when they offer up opinion as fact and say, men can be women. No, they can't. You cannot change your DNA. But if they want to express that opinion as opinion, I don't have an issue. And I don't think Jimmy Kimmel should have been canceled. I'm guessing that perhaps this was merely an excuse by it's ABC, I believe. I believe that this is an excuse by ABC to get rid of a guy who's tanking in the ratings, and that they're just using this conveniently. All right, we got an excuse now. We can say it's because of his comments about Charlie Kirk, and about more problematic is what he said about Donald Trump. And during the segment that had him canceled, Kimmel went on to say to poke fun at President Trump's narcissism. Trump was asked, it looks like it's on the grounds of the White House, he asked how he was holding up. And Trump said, and I quote, "I think very good." Oh, and by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They just started construction of the new ballroom in the White House. Oh, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be incredible. And that speaks to Donald Trump's narcissistic personality. And for me, labeling Donald Trump narcissistic is fair game. And I think it's accurate. But to be fair, we all have degrees of narcissism. We all have degrees of self-love. It's a spectrum. unlike gender is binary, but how narcissistic a person is, how much they're in love with themselves, there's a degree. And personally, my opinion, I would put Donald Trump very much at the far end, extreme end of narcissism. He's very narcissistic. He loves himself. You know, his excrement doesn't stink. Um, and this is where things get problematic for me is that we've been down this road before with McCarthyism. The United States has been down this road before with McCarthyism, where the government of the day holds too much sway on what gets to be put out on the public airwaves. And speaking as an individual who has had numerous of his videos canceled over my opinions regarding COVID, um, I don't. There's a bit of karma's a biatch. People are saying because we've seen the left try and cancel conservative voices. We've seen it on spades. If anyone tries to express the opinion, point of view that, hey, based on genetic reality and biological fact, there are two genders. There's male and there's female. There's XX and XY, and the story full stop. And our media and our government has tried to promote this idea that, well, gender, and they state it as fact, gender is just a societal construct, and you can, it's a spectrum and it's endless. There are countless genders out there, and they won't give voice to those who don't agree with that opinion. And then they pejoratively label us with, you know, slurs and ad hominem attacks are the norm. If you don't affirm, a million different genders, well, then you're racist and misogynistic and all these negative terms. And it's just weak. So let me read. Let's see if I'm catching up. And Eat Me is, I believe Nancy is, and Danny as well, and a number of people are happy to see, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. You did it to us. Now we're doing it to you. And I often say on this channel, I quote a line by the Mahatma Gandhi, who famously said, when you fight fire with fire, you end up with more fire. If censorship is wrong, it's wrong when the left does it to the right, and it's wrong when the right does it to the left. I am a free speech absolutist. I do not believe that someone should be canceled for having the quote unquote wrong opinion. And I think we have to be careful here with is Donald Trump so thin skinned that he cannot handle criticism? We've always had, and this happened again. I mentioned earlier, this happened during the McCarthy era. And the McCarthy era permeated right through. Well, it started during World War II, but it really took off in the 1940s and 50s during what is typically called the Cold War. And the US and the old Soviet Union, communism and free market economies, there was this war, Cold War, and there was paranoia in the United States that there were communists everywhere, and we have to identify them, we have to punish them, we've got to, and so they started the McCarthy hearings, the hearings on un-American activities, and individuals could save their skin. And it happened a lot in Hollywood. It happened a lot with television and Hollywood, where individuals would go to a meeting that would be identified as having communist attachment. And because they showed up at the meeting, now they were at risk of being blacklisted and no longer being able to work in the music, television, motion picture industries. You're going to be blacklisted. And an individual could go in front of the committee, and if they gave up names of other individuals who were at that meeting, then they could save their careers because now they're ratting out people. Name names. Seinfeld did an episode on this. We want to name. Remember the Chinese restaurant that insisted, we want to name. And I don't remember the episode that well, though. But I do not want to see the United States or my native Canada falling back into that level of paranoia. It's very disunifying. It's very divisive. It gets everyone fighting, yelling, screaming, arguing with each other. And I almost have to openly speculate, is that the ultimate goal here? To get the general populace, get everyone screaming, yelling, angry with each other, and foment the conditions that would create something of a civil war, something I talked about on my video of yesterday. It's almost like they want to push the extremes so far apart into their camps that they actually get violent against one another and drag the whole society down. And that will enable the government, whether it be in the United States or Canada or Britain or Europe, and provide the rationale or the excuse for martial law type measures, for draconian measures to be taken out, increase the prevalence of the surveillance state. We have to watch you more. We've got to track your movements. We've got to track your thoughts, your ideas, because uh, the world just isn't safe right now. Anyway, let me read up on what's being said and then we'll go from there. Eat Me is saying cancel culture has been pervasive since 2016 by the left, and the tides have shifted. The pendulum has swung. The scale has tipped to the other side. They're reaping what they have sown. But again, I bring up the point of when you fight fire with fire, you only end up with more fire. If censorship is wrong, you don't two wrong, the old adage of two wrongs don't make it right. Well, you did it to me, so I can do it to you. So then it's not wrong. And Amy is saying it's going to take a while for things to equalize, in her honest opinion. And this is the problem with that pendulum. It's almost like it's impossible. Picture it goes from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock. I'm trying to do things backwards so that they represent well on the screen. It goes from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock. And ideally, you would like to see that pendulum rest somewhere around 6 or between 5 and 4. But once it starts moving past and it goes all the way to 3 and maybe even starts getting up to 2, and then it starts swinging the other way and it gets down to 4, 5, 6, but then it doesn't stop and it keeps swinging. And then next thing you know, you're back up around 9 o'clock. And I don't know that we can ever get to a point where we can get the pendulum down in and around the 6 o'clock mark and stop the momentum from going too far in the other direction. At any rate, Nancy goes on to say, we need that feelings over fact movement to be pacified anyhow, considering it is what started the entire cancel culture movement. Thing is, cancel culture has been around even before 2016. Ask the Smothers Brothers, top rated comedy show that famously, and I forget what network aired them, but it doesn't matter. This was during the days of the Nixon administration. Nixon was president from 1968 to 1972. Then he was reelected, I think the biggest landslide ever in American electoral presidential election history. 1972 reelected, but then he was forced to resign in the wake of the Watergate scandal. I think he resigned sometime in 1973 or 74. But he'd been president for 5+ years. And during his time as president, the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour or comedy show, they put out a lot of anti-war commentary and humor and skits. They had Pete Seeger famously on the show, and in a song, he referred to the big fool. And everyone knew that the big fool he was referencing was Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson, Democratic president of the United States, who had taken over from Kennedy. The big fool says to march on. You can check it out yourself if you like sometime. The Big Muddy, Pete Seeger, Big Muddy Smothers Brothers show. And so that show was summarily canceled, and everyone knows why it was canceled. They had a contractual agreement. There's no way they should have been canceled, but the Nixon administration was angry and they wanted the Smothers Brothers off the air, and CBS, I think it was CBS, obliged and canceled their show. They took whoever the network was, I think it was CBS, they took them to court and actually won. But Tommy Smothers, he was the brains of the duo. He wanted to take them to task over the violation of their First Amendment rights, but rather than do that, it was determined that an easier path to victory was to say merely that CBS broke their contractual agreement with the comedy duo. And so it was under that pretext that they won like $250,000, which in and around 1970, I'm not sure exactly what year this happened, was in and around late 60s, early 70s. Um, $250,000 was not an insignificant sum. Back then, you had Major League Baseball players, a star player might make 100 grand a year. So to give things some scale. Um, And then Nancy goes on further to say that examples need to be set to define a boundary that shouldn't be crossed. Celebrating and politicizing an assassination doesn't strike me that he was celebrating the assassination. He didn't do that. He wasn't dancing on Charlie Kirk's grave. He was politicizing the assassination by trying to associate Tyler Robinson with the right wing Republicans, the MAGA crowd. That was a politicization of the event, certainly. But then the right has also politicized Charlie Kirk's association because they're trying to paint Tyler Robinson as just another left wing Antifa radical type individual. And so this and it should not be surprising because Charlie Kirk was himself a political figure. So you have the assassination of a political figure. Well, his assassination is automatically, you cannot avoid it being highly politicized. And we live in a world now where everything is political. Everything. Sports has become political because teams are now doing the pride crap, and that they're wading into the politics in the culture. And then you have certain individual athletes who are refusing to wear the pride colors, and that is seen as being a political statement. You merely try and tap out and say, look, I'm not playing I pitch for the LA Dodgers. This is a baseball game. I'm not here to make political statements. I'm not here to join the culture wars. I'm here to throw a baseball. I'm not putting on those pride colors. It's crazy, the world that we're living in. Uh, Let's read on what is being said. Danny's writing, yes, Kimmel deserved to be canceled. That's his opinion. It is not the first time he's done stupid crap on the air. Besides, and I don't think, again, I'll reiterate my point. I don't think he should have been canceled for what he said. But the besides point that Danny is making, his ratings were in the toilet, and the company was losing money. Yeah, and I tend to think that this was more this is our excuse. But there's a concerning element to it beyond the ratings. And was this done in a move to placate the White House, the same way that um, the Smothers Brothers was canceled to placate the White House, to make the administration of that era happy? CBS said, okay, we're going to take this off the air. Yeah. And CBS, likewise, back then with the Smothers Brothers, they tried to frame it as a business decision. Oh, it had nothing to do. And if you want to go down that, study up on or read up on the Smothers Brothers and how they got canceled, they were a hilarious comedy duo and one of the longest ever performing comedy duos ever. Anyway, Danny's saying, save money and save face. Kimmel has never been funny anyway. Well, humor's in the eye of the beholder. I mean, some people think that, I'm just trying to think, like an Andrew Dice Clay. Some people found him hilarious. Some people did not. Some people find, humor is a matter of taste. Not everyone agrees. And ultimately, what should happen is, you put your content out there, and if people engage with it, then you succeed. And if people don't engage with it, well, then you fail. Uh, Unfortunately, how does a guy like Jimmy Kimmel get on the air to begin with? I mean, there are a lot of talented individuals out there. I'm not willing to say that Jimmy Kimmel wasn't talented. Uh, I watched his acting during the whole faux Matt Damon Jimmy Kimmel feud. I watched the acting that he was doing, pretending to hate Matt Damon and to think he's a crappy actor and everything. And I thought he played the part well, but that's just me. A lot of people, I seem to be in the minority here. Sharunian's of the opinion that he deserved to get fired. Um, and Eat Me is saying something interesting I've heard tonight. Jobs don't have constitutions or First Amendment rights. Yeah, if I'm an employer, uh, this gets dicey. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm certainly not an American constitutional lawyer. But is it a violation of my constitutional rights to fire me from a job for expressing an opinion? And it doesn't matter whether you're the host of a late night talk show or if you're slinging fries at a McDonald's or stocking shelves at a grocery store or doing whatever. Should the expression of political ideas warrant firing somebody? Can that be used as an excuse to fire someone? I don't think it should. Uh, in point of fact, I do think within the context of the U.S. system that firing someone for the expression of political ideas, I do think that could be determined to be a violation of an individual's First Amendment rights, but I don't know that empirically. As I say, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an American constitutional lawyer. Danny says that he was raised. Oh, and I always do this. Where I go too far. Danny says, I was raised in a Catholic, half liberal, half conservative household, yet I'm Christian and libertarian conservative. Yeah. I think it's a fairly safe bet to say that this kid, based on everything that's been reported so far, that he was indoctrinated with left wing, uh, so called progressive ideology involved in a relationship with another guy who wanted to have a sex change operation. And I imagine in the context of today's culture, his boyfriend would have been saying, I'm a woman, and I'd be one of the guys like Charlie Kirk saying, no, you're not, you're a guy. And even if you go through the full sex change, then you are surgically altered male, but you're still a guy. You didn't change your DNA. You may have had a sex change operation, but now you are merely a surgically altered male. You didn't become an actual woman. A woman is born. You Mary Shelley, writer of Frankenstein. Yeah. Anyway, I've got Charlie Unimar USA Legends Cowboy. I don't know what you're writing there, Charlie. So I'm going to leave it for now. Danny's writing that aggravated murder is a form of homicide involving circumstances that aggravate the nature of the crime. In other words, factors like premeditation and intent to kill. There's no doubt, obviously, this had to be premeditated if the allegations prove true. Climbing up on a roof, laying there for 30 odd minutes is what they're saying, and then getting off a kill shot, obviously premeditated. And yes, Danny's asking if I'm on live messages. Yes, I did that early. Um, Danny likes Craig Ferguson. I know who he is. He's the old Scotsman. But like I say, having cut the cable to satellite and cable TV all the way, we're going back to 2010 or so 15 odd years ago. The content that I consume is online. And then Danny further goes on to say that the forgotten part of the idea, when we lose someone, we don't torch the place, we pray, we gather in peace. No one dies. That's why the right is right and the left is wrong. Well, many have made the observation about what happened in the wake of the George Floyd incident and what has happened in the wake of Charlie Kirk being assassinated. And uh, race is such, yeah, it's so ironic. And the left doesn't even see the irony. They look at everything through the lens of color. And the reason that there were protests and riots and everything was because George Floyd was black. If George Floyd had been white and had died in the exact or exact same circumstances, but had been white, it would have been a nothing burger. The only reason it blew up was because George Floyd was black. And it's an unfortunate reality of our times is that those on the progressive left who pronounce that they don't believe in racism, they act incredibly racist. They see everything through the lens of race. And I don't know that we can ever get past that. Uh, and then Danny goes on to say the problem is that if we don't bend over for the LGBT, the endless number of genders, and it's an interesting way of framing it. If we don't bend over for that, I'll leave that alone. Plus, 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 we're always in the wrong. Yeah, if you don't go along with that LGBTQ, et cetera, two spirit, and all the rest, if you don't go along with that, well, then you're canceled. You get canceled in today's culture. Uh, and we're in the wrong. I refuse to jump into their delusional pool. I just won't. Sorry, I wasn't raised that way. And then I have Sonia Ramsey, and I scrolled too far. That's what I keep doing. Best thing that has happened to him. I'm assuming you're meaning the best thing that's happened is the cancellation of Jimmy Kimmel. Now we can really tell the truth. He will be employed within minutes. The world is canceling Paramount, Disney, and any other business associated. And Sonia, probably that's the end. There's only so much you can put in the comment field in the live chat. I invite anyone who wants to express a long-winded thought. The live chat isn't the best for that because you're very limited. I don't know how many characters it is, but it's happened to me when I've engaged in live streams in the chat and you type it out and it won't take your full message. So if you want to put down long-winded thoughts, thought out manifestos, whatever, the comment field is down below. And again, I'll use that as a reminder. Thank you for the likes that I've gotten so far, and as well encourage anyone who enjoys the content, who likes the ramblings of this 59-year-old Canadian, to hit the subscribe button. Ex-military, I left the Canadian Armed Forces Communication Branch in June of 2021. And the reason I did that was because I knew what was coming. They were going to mandate order serving members to roll up their sleeves and take an injection that I was not willing to take. And so before that, the mandates came down, I opted for what is referred to in the Canadian Armed Forces as a voluntary release. But it's just a little bit about me for anyone new watching. Again, born 1966. I did spend 10 years growing up in the United States, moved back permanently to Canada at the age of 12, Canadian born, but I lived for almost 10 full years in the United States as an expatriate Canadian, playing hockey in Westwood, New Jersey, and Portland, Oregon. Uh, you know, and I find we all have unique perspectives, and that's part of mine. I did spend almost 10 years living New York, New Jersey, Oregon. Anyway, uh, so Sonia, I'm not sure exactly if Sonia is a fan of Jimmy Kimmel or not. I'm tending to, from my read of what she wrote down there, I'm thinking she might like him. Uh, and that now he's been freed from the corporate machine within ABC and Disney and all that, and now he'll be able to free to speak his mind. We'll see what happens. Danny is writing, and apparently Donald Trump wants to label the World Economic Forum as a certain type of group, beginning with a T and ending with an ist. And I've been told that that's not a word you want to say during live YouTube videos or during any YouTube video. So, errorist Tay, Danny and I were talking about in yesterday's live stream, Ig Latin or Ig Pay Atten Lay. It's where you take the first letter of the word you're saying and you add a to it and put it at the end. So my name's rather unfortunate, but Orden or Gordon becomes Orden Gay. On Orden Gay, or I'm Gordy. Ordy Gay Anuk K would be my Pig Latin name. So now you know what Ariste means. Um, Eatme's writing that history has proven that McCarthy was right. Communism is an enemy to Christianity. Well, absolutely. Communism is an enemy to Christianity. It's just a question of when you say history has proven that McCarthy was right, is that stating that the ends justify the means? Because eliminating communism, an ideology which repudiates not just Christianity, but faith of any description. In the Communist Manifesto, Karl Marx wrote that religion in general is the opiate of the masses. It's just a drug. And that is definitely anti-ethical to my own personal worldview. However, do the ends justify the means? So because communism is evil, in my eyes, and I agree with that, communism is evil, does that mean any means possible can be used to eradicate it? That's dangerous. When you get into Machiavellian end justifying the means, rationales being used, then I have an issue. Then I have a problem. You become what you hate. You become a mirror image of that which you profess to hate. I'm against, the authoritarian dictatorial aspect of communism. So to eradicate it, I'm going to bring in the polar opposite form of authoritarian dictatorship. I don't like authoritarian dictatorship. And then Amy goes on to say, we are already in a level of paranoia. I'm trying to stay away from that, try and keep myself grounded. I am a professing Christian, Danny, and Nancy certainly know that, but this is my 50-year-old Bible, more than 50 years old, 51 now. I got this when I was in uh, grade 3, 1974. And as you can see, it's kind of like me. It's rough around the edges, taped, held together with tape. Um, Presented to me by the Community Church of Glen Rock in New Jersey, September 1974. They didn't give a date, just September. Um, let's read on with what's being said. Um, and pardon me for the gaps. It's just that I scrolled too far. Um, and then Danny's saying, "Nice haircut, by the way." I'm sporting the same look. Yeah, I had let my hair grow out a bit, but I finally started shaving it down again. I call it pruning the dead tree. I mean, I've got pretty much nothing up top, just at the sides and in behind. So it's low maintenance, and I don't have to pay for haircuts. I can do it my DIY, do it yourself. Um, DIY. Danny's writing, it's just a real easy way for ABC to break their contract and not be in violation of anything. I think there's a suspicion that may be true, but there's also talk that there's merger and acquisition type activity going on with ABC, with Disney, with different corporate entities, and the head of the FCC, a Trump loyalist, or at least said to be a Trump loyalist, and a Trump appointee, certainly, and that they don't want to run afoul of, they don't want to offend the king, is the way it's being framed by some commentators. And I'm not going to dismiss that out of hand. I'm not just going to say, well, that's being reported by the Washington Post, New York Times, Toronto Star type publications, so it's wrong. I think there may be some merit to it, that they're afraid of offending Donald Trump, who does appear to be very thin skinned in a lot of cases, doesn't take well to criticism, doesn't take well to those who push back against him. So anyway, Danny's writing that he's Maple MAGA. I I um, I consider myself MAGA light. There are I do not suffer from Trump derangement syndrome. I use this word all the time, I compartmentalize. I I look at individual policies, individual pieces of legislation, and I'll decide, do I like that? Do I not like that? And there are things that Donald Trump has done that I have liked. And there are things that he's done that I do not like, and there are things that I'm in between on. Give you an example of an in between one is the Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico. I don't really care. So I'm not going to get mad about him renaming it, and I'm not going to support it either. Who cares? When it comes to his assertion that men that in the United States of America that they only recognize two genders, male and female, and that sporting events, athletic competition that's designated as women, girls, female. Sorry, you cannot be a man and compete in that. I don't care what your inner subjective feelings are. Reality takes precedence in the United States of America. Sadly, in my native Canada, your subjective feelings matter more than biological objective reality. So again, I compartmentalize. I think it is fair game to criticize Trump. He's asked, how are you holding up in the wake of the assassination killing of your friend? I think I'm doing pretty good. Did you notice we're building a new ballroom on the White House? It's going to be amazing. It's going to be great. Well, what does that have to do with how you're holding up after the assassination of your friend? And does that speak to a narcissistic personality type? To my mind, it does. And it's fair game to criticize him over it. But maybe not. Maybe not, because if you criticize him, then is he going to have his FCC chairman refuse to approve a key merger that was slated to take place between Disney and ABC and some other group? You know, that's concerning. Danny's taking things a little off topic, but that's okay. If you do not want your kids indoctrinated, homeschool them. I did, and now my kids have great jobs and can think for themselves without any lenses thrown on them by the educational system. No kidding. Whale has shown up, and he's writing Time Machine. Smothers Brothers' joke was, if the rooster says cock-a-doodle-doo, what does the hen say? The hen says, any cockle do any cockle. That was the type of humor that they had on the Smothers Brothers. And sometimes it landed flat with me, and sometimes I found it funny. Again, humor is subjective. That's a cute one. I like that joke. I may borrow it. Danny's saying, and in any case, you were wondering, due to the fact that I'm a flat earther, Danny espouses what is referred to as a geocentric model, as opposed to the heliocentric model. Or if the more common, Danny espouses a flat earth view. My kids were both taught flat earth and globe earth because their testing was on globe earth stuff, unfortunately. Whatever. I've done a video and I've talked about flat earth before. It's just something I, for the most part, just stay away from, because my world doesn't change. Whether the earth is a globular sphere, spinning around the sun, the heliocentric model, whether that's true or whether Danny and those of his ilk are right. When I hop on a plane, if I'm going down to Dominican or Cuba or wherever I go, it doesn't change anything for me. So it's not that important. Although I do understand, I know a number of people who are adamantly flat Earth, and for many, it's symptomatic. It's part of an indoctrination process, and they see it as it's a way to get humanity writ large to just buy into whatever you want them to buy into. And for what it's worth, when just going down the conspiratorial rabbit holes, things like the moon landing, I have massive serious doubts as to the validity of the moon landing. But I'm open-minded enough to say, if you were to ask me right now, do I believe we landed on the moon or not? I would be inclined to say no. I won't go full, but I'm leaning decidedly in that direction. But I'm open-minded enough to say that if someone could show me some compelling proof, and the biggest compelling proof would be show me, let's go back and then give me a high-powered telescope and let me see the people on the moon. I've looked through a high-powered telescope at the moon's surface when I was a kid, and you're practically right on the surface. And so if I could, that would convince me definitively that yes, we've been to the moon. Um, Getting back to being bald, Danny's saying that he and we save money on haircuts, and we don't join the hair club for men, and we don't have to pay to color our hair. Low maintenance. I love low maintenance. And although it's funny, years ago, baldness. I mean, go back to the 70s when the musical Hair came out. Give me a head with hair, long, beautiful hair. And baldness throughout most of human history has been somewhat shameful. It's even in the Bible. And I'm trying to remember, was it, uh, there are two prophets that I get mixed up, and now I'm forgetting both. Um, but and I can't remember the name of the prophets. Help me out, someone. But where one prophet is derided as being an old bald head. And it used to be that people wore powdered wigs to avoid everyone, whether they had hair or not, wore powdered wigs in colonial times. Anyway, that's a big digression. But there is nothing, I just thank goodness I have a reasonably decently shaped melon. I've seen guys who've gone bald. Had a teacher in high school went bald, and he had pot marks. It wasn't a smooth head. He had like dents in his cranium, and it didn't look that great, but whatever. Brett is writing, Danny, peace be with you. God cares. Lift his name and call yourself Charlie Kirk. We must continue to preach love and truth. And Charlie understood God loves all his children. Charlie Kirk was an amazing representative of the Christian faith. But I'm a little cautious. I'm a little leery of overly attaching myself with Charlie Kirk, simply because, yeah, it's like John the Baptist. John the Baptist famously said, I am not the Christ. I come before him. I'm not worthy to untie his sandals. And there's a tendency I find we live in an era where everything's a cult of personality. And Charlie Kirk, and he said this many times himself, and I've said it, and most professing Christians will say this, we're broken, fallen, sinful creatures. I am, Charlie Kirk was, everyone is. We're all broken, sinful, fallen. And it's important to remember that our worship is to be pointed in the direction of the cross at Jesus Christ, who led the perfect, sinless life so that he could be that perfect Passover sacrifice and bring us all into relationship with God. Um, and then Danny saying, maybe Donald just, this is a good point. This is a good point. Maybe Donald just isn't ready to discuss how he's feeling with that reporter. So he deflected. And that's a very fair point. And thank you for bringing that up, Danny. And again, this is why I love the live chat. Yeah. See, yeah, I gave the typical reaction that you're seeing from the left, talking about how narcissistic and everything Donald Trump is. But at the same time, we have to recognize, and the left would tell you this, everyone grieves differently. And some people, a manner of coping with the loss of a close friend is to push it away. So if I'm going to be charitable, and as a Christian, I'm called to be charitable, was that Donald Trump merely pushing it away, getting away from the issue for his own grieving? And that's perfectly legitimate. And Danny, thank you so much for pointing that out to me and to anyone else who, like me, was jumping to a conclusion based on a prejudiced, biased, pejorative view of Donald Trump. Fair comment. Wonderful. Um, And Brett is seconding that opinion. And Danny's welcoming Brett. Uh, And then Danny's sharing something for the Moon skeptics. Watch this. Okay, that's up there in the live chat. And I've got Nameless School. Ah, saying not a Trump fan, obviously, using some very negative language, will suffer when I gotta when huh, I didn't know that Donald Trump had suffered from a major adverse health event. But then again, he did roll up his sleeve, apparently. Whether he actually got the juice or not, we don't know. And then Eat Me is warning you, Nameless School, we try and keep it respectful here. Danny and Nancy are both moderators, so they're going to clean up the content, anything that crosses the line, and they have full license to, you know, look after that. And Danny is echoing what Nancy just said. Max Power has shown up. Haven't seen you for a while. Good evening. Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday it is. Uh, I've had to step away. Max is saying that he's had to step away for a while. And that's something I recommend a lot of people you may want to do from time to time. This world can be insane. It's a whirlpool. And if you find your mental health or physical health, and if you find your moods and whatever, if things are getting too bad, get away from the internet. Cut off the if you have TV, cut it off. Go walk in nature. That's huge. Go walk in a provincial park, state park, if you're American, whatever. Get out in nature, connect, do some grounding, take your shoes off, walk on God's beautiful earth, and shut all this stuff off. I get though that it can be difficult because after having been through the COVID era, if you don't stay connected, then all of a sudden you go to do something and they're like, "Didn't you hear? The world has changed." No, I shut off the TV. It was driving me crazy. I shut off the news and whatever. Uh, and then James Halton is here. Just jumped on. Is this a pro Kimmel fire or an anti Kimmel fire? Uh, I hear Smothers Brothers, so I assume against. James, I'm here to tell you that I am personally myself, I'm expressing the opinion that I don't think he should have been fired strictly for those comments, for what he said. I don't think he should have been fired. But there are others here who believe that he should have been. And welcome to democracy. Welcome to free speech. Welcome to the free exchange of opposing points of view. We talk. This all came out of the fact that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and that was one thing Charlie Kirk was famous about. He loved going into the enemy camp. He wanted opposing views to discuss things, and he quite often said that it's when we stop discussing things that's when things can get dangerous and scary. So anyway, hope you stick around, James. And again, I'll use this as a chance to remind everyone to, if you're new to the station and enjoying the content, you're welcome to subscribe, 1200-ish, whatever I'm at. If we can boost that up, that's wonderful. And likewise, thumbs up. I have a number already. If you want to give me if you haven't hit the thumb up, you can only do it once. This isn't like American elections, maybe. Not going to go down the whole election fraud story. Some people believe that you can vote more than once. Some people believe you can't. But as far as I know, when it comes to YouTube, you can only click that thumb up button once. Max, for his part, didn't like Kimmel and didn't find him to be funny, and I found him to be untalented. But I personally don't believe in canceling anyone. So Max seems to be at least somewhat lockstep or in agreement with me. I think censorship is a tool of authoritarians. Amen. I agree with you 100%. The whole idea of censorship is that I don't like this, so I'm not going to watch it. That's not censorship. I don't like Jimmy Kimmel. I'm not going to watch him. Nothing wrong with that. But when you say, I don't like Jimmy Kimmel, I don't want anyone else to be able to watch him, then you're getting into dictatorial authoritarian style governance, and that's where it appears Max and I are perfectly in agreement. I'm not a fan of authoritarianism, dictatorial. And Danny, getting back to my suggestion that people get at, if things are overwhelming, cut off the TV, get off the internet, go for a walk in nature. Danny's saying, but don't forget when you go out in nature, leave your electronics at home, fully disconnect and enjoy nature for what it is. It's not time for Instagram or Snapchat. Amen, brother. And again, Danny and regulars know this, Danny and Nancy, Max, you probably know it too. I don't have a cell phone. It's been a couple, 2 or 3 years since I cut the cell phone cord. I wonder how many would be able to do that in today's world. Now, in fairness, am I completely cut off from the cellular world? No, my wife has a cell phone. So because we need a phone. And so it's with her all the time. But when I need to make a call, honey, give me the phone. Honey, I need to make a call. Give me the phone. And then I will use it. But I use it as a phone. I do not use it as, I don't chat anymore. I don't instant message because I don't have this thing on me all the time. So anyway, I like what Max, rest in peace. I've never been a fan of RIP. It just I like writing the full thing out, rest in peace. When Candy, if anyone's wondering, Candy the Wonder Pop, I was thinking about her again tonight. I went shopping and there are a few things in the car, the tennis balls, um, her, a little towel, to, and anyway, when I wrote my post on Facebook, I initially wrote RIP Candy. And then I changed it to rest in peace because that sounds so much nicer than an acronym. Anyway, Max has he's like the stream and he's subbed to the channel. I think you already were. That's awesome. Uh, Danny's saying that he doesn't think he should be that Kimmel should have been fired necessarily for those comments. But when you add up everything over the years, at some point, enough's enough. And that's what the straw that broke the camel's back. Ultimately, I think there's a strong possibility that those comments that they're being used as an excuse to try and get brownie points with the White House, to get brownie points with the FCC, the regulatory commission, regulatory body that oversees the ABCs, NBCs, CBSs of the world. And they're trying to score brownie points so that later M&A, merger and acquisition type activity will be looked upon favorably. That's my genuine opinion. Uh, Danny's writing, I'll need to speak to you about the homework you gave me after the broadcast on Messenger. Okay. Uh, yes, now I know what you're talking about. Okay. Did that video go down Orwell's rabbit hole or memory hole? Because that's weird. Nameless school. Okay. Might have a troll. Whale is writing, I get the feeling that many mainstream salary biggies are in danger because people have lost patience with big pharma ads. Well, we're tired of seeing tonight, the Oscars brought to you by Pfizer. CNN News brought to you by Pfizer, 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 Pfizer. And most people, if you ask them about Bextra, they don't even know it because there wasn't enough reporting on it, an anti-inflammatory drug that Pfizer brought onto the market in the year 2000, a safe and effect, and approved as a safe and effective uh, anti-inflammatory drug, I guess, pharmaceutical product, and it was on the market from 2000 until 2005, and then it had to be withdrawn from the market. Too much heart damage, too many deaths. Read up on that yourselves. But it didn't get a lot of play in the mainstream media. Why? Why wasn't the CNNs and the ABC, CBS, and even Fox, why weren't they not covering this? Is it because, the US Open brought to you by Pfizer? Tonight's news brought to you by Pfizer. Did that play a role in ensuring that Bextra, their pharmaceutical drug, uh, was that the mainstream media not biting the hand that feeds it? Anyway, um, James Polton writes something about Charlie Kirk. I don't wish him a murder, but that guy spread hate. I don't think he spread hate in any way, shape, or form. But what happens is people got angry at what Charlie Kirk said. Well, suck it up, Buttercup. There are differing opinions out there in the world. And just because you don't happen to agree with what Charlie Kirk said does not mean that he's spreading hate. I do not like these individuals who go on and they're on The View and they're all over Canada's CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, about how gender is just a societal construct and it's actually your own inner feelings that determine what your gender is. And if you want to express a female identity, well, that's what a woman is. A woman is someone who outwardly expresses a female identity, and you have to recognize. And I think that's garbage. And I think it's hateful to tell that to little children who are just finding themselves and they're not sexualized beings yet. They're prepubescent. And I think it is disgusting and hateful to do that to children. But would I, want someone to be prevented from putting their thoughts, views, opinions out into the public sphere, into the marketplace of ideas? No, I would not. Um, he became a statistic of what he preached 2 years ago. It is crazy that the writer trying to, and I'm not exactly sure of the words you're using here, James Harlton, but I think he's trying to say that they're trying to make him into a Christ-like figure, a Jesus-type figure. And then you got cut off. And now are canceling people who have opposing opinions. And yeah, this is my line about you become what you hate. We've seen the left pejoratively, negatively, we've seen the censorship that has taken place, and you're not allowed to express certain views, and now it's playing back, it's fighting fire with fire. There are a lot on the right who are saying karma, you're getting, you did it to us, now we're doing it to you. Well, two wrongs don't make it right. Anyway, and Max does not agree that Charlie Kirk spread hate. I would invite you to watch. He went on to a show. He did a podcast with a group of women, and the name of their company, I think, is called @whatever. And I gather from what little I've seen of it that some of the women on that show, or perhaps all of them, were part of that OnlyFans group. And this is, I'm not sure. It's a website where women, it's basically pornography. They have sex with multiple partners and they put it out there and then they make money off it. They're porn stars. And Charlie Kirk went and he engaged with them. And the first snippet I saw had one of them saying to him that they appreciated his tone and that he was respectful and not hateful and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He went right into the lion's den, so to speak, and you know, spread a message that I agree with. And I'm grateful. I'm happy to see that though there are elements within the left who are willing to entertain dialogue, and there are elements within the left who are so adamantly they're convinced I know everything, I'm right, you're wrong, and so I'm justified in shutting you up. I'll give kudos to another guy, Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders gave one of the most reasoned responses to everything that's happened in the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination. Uh, he repudiates this idea that and Bernie Sanders is one of the few that on the left who's willing to engage with the right. Bernie Sanders went on the Joe Rogan podcast, and this is what we need. But so often I find it's individuals on the left, prominent individuals on the left, they want to be stuck in their echo chamber. And Charlie Kirk, God bless him, went into the enemy camp. Anyway, and I agree with Max. I don't think he spread hate at all. Now, did that mean that those who listened to what he had to say Did they hate hearing what he had to say? Yeah, they hated it. They hated him saying that life begins at conception. They hated that. They think that's a dangerous message. But, it's an idea, it's a thought, it's a view, it's an opinion. And Charlie Kirk would defend it. He would present it as fact. He would say it's scientifically proven that life begins at conception. And I believe that his rationale for that, stating that as a factual proposition, was that DNA is for him the presence, the existence, the coding within the DNA double helix, that is what life is. And that does start at conception. Everything is there at conception. So if that's your definition for what life represents, is a living organism that has the DNA to program things out to develop into a fully functioning life form, well, then, yeah, by that criterion, life does begin at conception. Others talk about heart rate or, brain development, brain waves, things like that. But anyway, uh, and Danny, I'm having no problem with James expressing a different point of view. Just to let you know, everything I've read so far. Um, I appreciate having individuals from a differing point of view come onto my streams. Uh, and Eat Me's writing, and Nancy's saying, let's just keep it civil, and that's what I like. I want things to be civil. Uh, uh, Nancy's writing at James Harden that crisis actors do exist. Don't believe there were some in this sad event. Well, one thing that's coming out that's very interesting, it's appearing very possible that calling this a conspiracy may, in point of fact, be correct. It will all come down to whether or not this older gentleman, there's no white-haired guy who apparently immediately after the shooting, like within seconds or minutes, was saying, I did it, I'll do it again, shoot me now. And that because everyone fixated on him, okay, we've got the killer. And I even thought, oh, okay, they caught him, bang, right away. Uh, and I think I did a video just talking about it in the immediate aftermath when you're trying to process everything. They got a guy who's saying, I did it, go ahead and shoot me. And they're saying that he's now being criminally charged because his distraction allowed the actual killer, if the allegations are true, Tyler Robinson, allowed him to escape. And the only question I have now at this point is, was there any connection between this Tyler Robinson and this old guy saying distracting all security and law enforcement? Were they in cahoots? Open question. If they were in cahoots, then it means it's a criminal conspiracy. A criminal conspiracy is two or more people operating in concert to commit an illegal act. So, they try to tell us, they say that Lee Harvey Oswald. They say that Lee Harvey Oswald was acting alone, but I think most reasonable people recognize when he said, "I'm just the patsy" on national TV as he was being paraded around the Dallas police station. I think most people realize he was part of a criminal conspiracy. Criminal conspiracy is one of the most commonly laid charges in our court system, both in Canada and the US. Criminal conspiracy to commit murder, criminal conspiracy to commit robbery. Two or more individuals acting together. So this may help to rehabilitate the whole idea of a conspiracy. Conspiracies happen all the time. People conspire, but they've taken this word conspiracy and tried to make it something of a pejorative little trope. And oh, you believe in conspiracies? Yeah, duh. People conspire all the time. Watergate was a conspiracy, a proven conspiracy. The Lincoln assassination, John Wilkes Booth, that was a proven conspiracy because John Wilkes Booth had conspired with numerous individuals, and 7 or 8 individuals ended up being executed, hung by the neck for the criminal conspiracy to assassinate not just Lincoln. The original plan was to take out McClellan, who was the vice president, and Ulysses S. Grant, to take him out as well. And the vice president was stabbed multiple times in 1860, whatever year that was, 1863, I don't know what year exactly the Lincoln assassination took place, but James Wilkes Booth did his job. The guy who was taking out the vice president did his job, but the vice president survived, and the guy who was supposed to take out Ulysses S. Grant chickened out. Anyway, I love history. James is saying, well, that's a weird stance to take considering that's what Kirk was all about. You're going to have to give me some more flesh on that. And please be lenient, Nancy and Danny, on if someone's blatantly swearing and dropping F-bombs, etc., okay, fair enough. But if, let's not be too heavy-handed. And then we have Sheriff of YouTube, who is a total smartass, who just shows up from time to time, is saying Trantifa militants are real. And actually, that I agree with. There are individuals, they call themselves, they're trans activists. So they deny the basic fabric of biological reality, and they associate themselves with Antifa, which is supposed to mean anti-fascist, and yet those who identify as Antifa so often use fascist tactics. They look to silence opposition. And I've spoken before how they, chant and try and use blowhorns to try and, clamp down the speech they don't like. And that's what fascists do. Fascists want to dominate the public square. They don't want opposing views to have be given any space in the public square. And so they try to shout them out, intimidate, scare, bully, everything. What's Danny writing? I'm not sure what James wrote something to the effect of opposing opinions to be expressed, of course. I'm not sure what you were referring to, but that's all good. Danny saying freedom of speech is great, but unfortunately, my freedom of speech does not end when you're exactly. Yeah, and that's what I was talking with James about, is the fact that, were people offended by the things that Charlie Kirk said, the opinions he held, the opinions he put out into the public square? Yeah, absolutely. There are people who thought they were hateful, but that does not make them hateful. Just they're your subjective feelings. I do not have to share another individual's subjective feelings. If some guy wants to put on a dress and thinks he's a woman, fair enough. Hey, you can think whatever you want, but I'm not required. It's that old line. You can join the circus, but I don't have to buy a ticket to the show. Go nuts. Put on whatever you want. Where we get into difficulty is when you get these guys doing this, and then they want to go into women's only spaces, but they're not women. They are men. And this has been done by design to get everyone fighting, and they know now who will go along with just about anything. They know who will toe the line because they want their social credit score to go up. They want to be viewed as virtuous in the marketplace. Anyway, let's read on, as we're coming to the end. I've gone on for over an hour, coming up on an hour and a half. Eat Me is writing that most of us here are Christians, and she's saying that to James Harton. Most people on here are that I'm aware of do profess Jesus Christ as Lord. And trying to think of something to say along those lines. What did Jesus think about free speech? Do you think Jesus offended people with his speech when he went before the Pharisees and the scribes and the religious elders of the people of the Israelites in first century Roman occupied Judea? Oh, yeah. And he called them vipers. You vipers, you den of thieves. and he took them to task, and they considered it hateful, and they silenced him, or so they thought. But they didn't. And I don't feel that way. Sheriff, I do enjoy it. I enjoy your participation. Uh, but I find, and we're like-minded in that way. I consider myself, I can be something of a smartass. Anyway, and I'm pretty much caught up. I've got Max saying, I think the trans agenda is being pushed as a precursor to transhumanism, where they will push humans merging with machines. And anyone who thinks that's, this idea of biodigital convergence, transhumanism, anyone thinking that this is, a conspiracy theory, I would invite you to go to Horizons Canada, which is a government of Canada agency that reports directly into the Prime Minister's office. And they've put out white papers talking about the coming age of biodigital convergence, about uploading your dream data to the cloud and downloading it later. And I've talked about it before on this station and shared the link. But if you just type biodigital convergence, don't do transhumanism, because that's a bit of a pejorative label. But biodigital convergence and Horizons Canada, Government of Canada agency reporting directly into the Prime Minister's office. Oh yeah, it's on the table. We've got, what's his name, Elon Musk with Neuralink. Not a fan of Musk. Anyway, Max is writing, I think the trans agenda being pushed, where they will push humans merging with machines. And then he says, see Fourth Industrial Revolution, which I recently saw mentioned on CTV News. The Fourth Industrial Revolution is a book co-written by World Economic founder Klaus Schwab. He's the principal author, but there's another name. I think he's a French author who wrote it along with him. He wrote two books, two that I'm aware of: The Great Reset and The Fourth Industrial Revolution. And that is exactly what the Fourth Industrial Revolution is. It is the world of, when you listen to the World Economic Forum, the WEF, you have this guy named Yuval Noah Harari. Not exactly how to spell Harari, but Noah, Noah, Yuval, or no, it's Yuval Noah, Yuval, Noah, like Noah in the Ark, and then Harari, however you spell Harari. And he's from Israel. He's an Israeli, but he's an atheistic Israeli. So if he has a Jewish identity, his Jewish identity is ethnic in nature, not religious. And he views everything. We've gotten to where we are. It's all been just random mutations and accidents. And now, is with biodigital convergence, he's saying we can enter into the age of directed evolution, where rather than things just happening randomly by happen chance, that instead now our intelligent minds, with the assistance of artificial intelligence, can direct evolution, and we can build a utopia, a perfect world. Man, this stuff gets Orwellian as and scary. And James, James? One thing I do not enjoy is the gaslighting. Gaslighting is something the intellectually weak do. Oh, you believe this? Are you kidding me? You're an idiot. I'm so smart. I hate that. I genuinely hate that. So I'm getting triggered, but I do hate that. I hate gaslighting, and I find it as the weapon of the intellectually weak, and I have to watch myself, because it's an easy go-to. It's an easy go-to when you're 100% totally convinced that you're right about everything, or about a specific issue, is to get, oh, you're one of those. Yeah, and that's not conducive to mature, intelligent conversation. Gaslighting is anathema to it. Anyway, uh, and let's not get into an argument over it, because it's too involved, and it's not what this stream is about right now. Maybe I'll do another one talking about flat Earth, but not right now. And as I've said, just to be clear, if anyone's curious, I I'm agnostic on the whole heliocentric, geocentric models. I'm an agnostic on that. I don't really care. Um, and then Max is writing, the Bible is pro-truth, and that requires free speech. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. That's the opening to John's Gospel, the Gospel according to John. It's the very opening words of it. John's Gospel, very poetic. Again, he's amening everything that Max just wrote. Jesus is Lord, Jesus is King, Jesus is the crown, Jesus is the name above every name, the name to which every knee shall bow. And then I have Danny saying, Klaus, as in Schwab, the clown, very powerful, wealthy, and influential clown, unfortunately. Eatme's writing, uploading dream data. There is a movie about this topic, and even the fictional. It is a stern warning on not to tamper with this. The message is too long. Yeah, Government of Canada website, Horizons Canada, check it out. Talking about uploading, they give a scenario. It's not a prediction so much as this is one of the areas where this is the way things could happen. And it talks about a woman waking up and she downloads her dream data, and her artificial intelligent assistant encourages a walk in nature to counteract her recurring trapped in a small box dream. And that she doesn't have to take insulin because now she's got monitoring on her insulin levels in her pancreas, and they're able to make adjust. It's all directed evolution. Danny writes, Klaus Schwab and Thierry, and I can't pronounce the last name, Malaret, wrote COVID-19, The Great Reset. And then Danny says, I own the book. As Sun Tzu said in The Art of War, you must know your enemy and his ways to fight your enemy. That's another, Sun Tzu, The Art of War. I think it's about 2,500 years ago that book was written. Treatise on War by a famous Chinese general. And know your enemy is one of the hallmarks. Know your enemy, and the importance of deception, how you should always be deceiving your opponent. When you're weak, try to appear strong. When you're strong, try and look weak. When you're very close, when you're when you're at war and your forces are very close to your opponent, try to appear far away. And when you're very far away, try to appear close. And I think it makes sense. It makes sense. Anyway, Whale Oil is saying that gaslighting is the primary means to express ignorance along with ridicule. But for what it's worth, as I admitted to our friend here who's shown up probably first time, I don't know. I've done it. I've done it. I think it's something we've all done. I think this is where the Christian faith becomes so very important. Is Christ admonishes us to look at the log in our own eye before we point out the speck in another's eye. And so while I gave our friend grief over the gaslighting, I have to recognize and acknowledge that I've done it too. And I think we all have. And Jesus extends the ultimate grace to us. So we likewise as Christians are to extend grace to others. If someone makes a mistake, if they gaslight, hey, have you never done that? Have you ever looked at someone and gone, oh, you're one of those? You've never done that? I would be surprised if you haven't. I try not to, but you got to be aware of it. And then Max is writing that all truth passes through three stages. Many will have heard this. First one gets ridiculed, then violently opposed, and then lastly, it's finally accepted. And O.J. Malik has shown up from the great state of Florida, and I don't mean that in any way other than genuine. I've given some thought to maybe in a year or two becoming a Floridian. I'll have to learn how to say "bless your heart." I don't know if they say that down in Florida. I know they do down in Texas and other parts of the South. Bless your heart. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing. It can be used sarcastically. Uh, but anyway, getting back to Max's point about first, truth is ridiculed, then violently opposed, and then it's finally accepted. I think there actually might be some more steps in that process. But anyway, Coach Malik, you've shown up right toward the end. I'm going to end my stream as I so often do with a blessing from the book of Numbers. Thank you, everyone who's engaged with me. I enjoyed the stream tonight much more than I found yesterday's just too. I didn't like yesterday's stream, but that happens from time to time. It is what it is. Tonight was really good. I enjoyed it. I hope you did too. If you didn't, well, too bad. I did. And it's like, well, I think Jimmy Kimmel's funny. Well, I think he's an idiot. Well, we're all entitled to our differing opinions. Um, and you're welcome for the stream. Max thanking me and saying, God bless everyone. Yeah. So if you made it all the way to the end and you haven't subscribed to the channel, I'll ask you to give it some thought. And if you hit the bell next to the subscribe button and then you hit all, then you'll always know when I have content uploading. And likewise, the thumb up. And down in the comment field down below, if you want to put out a long or a more thought out whatever, more thought out tests on critique of what your thoughts are on Jimmy Kimmel or anything else we talked about tonight. You're welcome to do that. And I read them all and I make best efforts to respond to as many as I can, especially when they're, long and drawn out and well thought out. So the blessing I like to give at the end of my streams is this: may the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you, and may the Lord God Almighty, creator of all things, may he grant you peace. As we mentioned earlier in the stream, take your cell phone, put it on the table, get rid of all your devices, all your electronics, go for a walk in the country, in the woods, connect with nature, connect with God's beautiful creation. Think of the second verse of that great hymn, How Great Thou Art. When in the woods or forest glade I wander, I hear the birds sing sweetly in the trees. When I look down from lofty mountain grandeur, I hear the brook and I feel the gentle breeze, and then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art. How great thou art. It's a great way to orient yourself and realize your position in this amazing creation. We are the creature. We are not the creator. You have groups like the World Economic Forum, like Klaus Schwab's and the Yuval Noah Harari's, who think they want to elevate the creature and become the creator. Well, that's dangerous. So God bless all, and we'll see you all when I do my next stream. Good night.